Welcome to This Week in Money. I'm Jim Goddard. Today we'll chat with CIBC Wood Gundy Vancouver investment advisor Ross Clark about how the Canadian dollar is doing and its connection to the crude oil market. We also talk to Trends Journal publisher Gerald Celente. He discusses how current government and central bank policies will push us into an all-out depression. We'll talk to Ross Clark right after this.
GEM International is a new diamond explorer in the richest diamond producing country in Africa, located next to the fourth largest producing diamond mine in the world. International Spotlight is on an 1109 carat diamond recently discovered in Africa by a fellow Canadian junior with a proven operator and finance team. GEM International trades on the TSX Venture Exchange, symbol GI. Visit us at gemdiamondmining.com.
Welcome to This Week in Money, the source for market opinions. Here is Jim Goddard.
We're chatting with Ross Clark. He's an investment advisor at CIBC Wood Gundy in Vancouver. Welcome back to This Week in Money, Ross.
Always good to be with you, Jim.
What is happening with crude oil? It seems to me it's creeping up again.
It is, and I love the definitions that people have for various markets. They love to call 20% moves either bull market moves after they've rallied 20 or bears when they've been down 20. I tend to look at longer term directions and to try and define whether we're in bull or bear markets. And the oil market, which is up 25% in the last 12 trading days, is all part of what I believe is a bullish phase that we started in back in January, February, after that terrible decline from over $100. And when we look at what I believe are the five preceding major bull markets that we've had in the oil market since they started trading it as a futures contract back in the early 1980s, the rallies off those major bottoms have certain characteristics, and as we've talked about it, the first part of it is a rally that takes roughly 4 months, which we did into May, June of this year. You then get a good corrective move that will typically give back 15 to 20%, well, actually not give back, but actually decline by 15 to 20% off the highs before it establishes a bottom that can then sustain the next move on the upside. So if we look at the summer that we've had here, the oil market topped out just around 52, sold off to 39.25 the first part of August, got into, from a technical perspective, what we look at as the bottom of a channel, that was around the $42 to $43 level. Overshot it marginally, gave some good oversold readings when we look at our technicals, like the relative strength index. It got just perfectly into an oversold. We look at day counts, which we use a system called the DeMark sequential, and most bottoms in the last 2 years have occurred 3 to 4 days after one of the sequential alerts. That's what happened this time around, and now we've had a great move off the bottom, not only just for the oil market, but for the oil-related stocks.
I also think perhaps Canadians and Americans are driving more this summer. I've just noticed more RVs on the highways, more than I've seen in the last few years. Is that driven by lower than usual gasoline prices over the summer?
Well, definitely. Now, this year the gasoline price had its classic little rally into the spring. We had our May high, and that was part of the rally that we had recommended as a seasonal. What prices have eased off, and yes, you're getting pretty good demand as far as the gasoline is concerned. We actually saw inventories on oil down this week for the first time in many, many weeks, so we're seeing decent consumption. Although, everybody tries to relate week by week or day by day action to, a given set of fundamentals and look for just that one-day reaction. I try and look for the longer-term moves, and from what I see right now, this move that started from that February low, we most likely have somewhere between another 2 and 6 months left in it when we take a look at those 5 bull market moves that we've had in this last 3 decades. So I think for all that the market's had a pretty good rally up to $49 this week, a setback that would take us back into the mid-40s again, that $44 to $45 range, with a small oversold reading in the relative strengths would be the next decent buying opportunity, because you don't want to chase markets. You want to let them come back to you once you deem that a trend is working and try and pick them up at the most opportune points. So I think that's the mindset that I would be working with for the nenext few weeks.
The Canadian dollar had almost 2 weeks, business weeks, of going up, tied directly to oil.
Look, the oil and Canadian dollars, if you were to take the charts and overlay them over the last 4 or 5 years, you'd have difficulty ascertaining which is which. And the rally of the last 2 weeks has just been right in context with that correlation. What I like to look for are the small deviations that happen usually towards the end of the trends. If we take a look at the rally that we had coming in the first quarter of this year, Canadian dollar topped out early and then had a secondary high in April. And it had the first high up around 80, the second one it was at 78. That lower high at 78 occurred as oil was making its $52 high. So there was what we call a bearish divergence, with the Canadian not confirming the strength in oil. And so that gave us that nice break into the summer. Now, when we got into the late July, early August bottom, coincidentally there, the Canadian dollar bottomed on the 25th of July. Oil and the CRB, the Commodity Research Bureau Index, they had a very small bounce but went down to lower lows on August the 2nd and 3rd as the Canadian dollar was holding at a higher low. The beginnings of a potential bearish reversal in here, and when I see how overbought the oil market itself is, I wouldn't be at all surprised to see both oil and the Canadian dollar ease back in this next couple of weeks.
Ross, thanks a lot for chatting with us.
Nice to be with you, Jim.
Coming up next, Trends Journal publisher Gerald Celente on This Week in Money.
Always consult your investment professional before making any investment decision.
I'm Larry Ray, President and CEO of American Manganese, Inc., listed on the TSX Venture, ticker symbol AMY, A-M-Y, with proprietary patents in the U.S., China, and South Africa. Our focus is on recycling lithium-ion batteries for electric vehicles. China recently legislated the responsibility for recycling onto their electric vehicle manufacturers and importers. For more information, please visit AmericanManganeseInc.com or phone me, Larry Ray, at 778-574-4444.
This Week in Money is archived online at talkdigitalnetwork.com.
My guest is Gerald Celente. He's the publisher of the Trends Journal, available online at trendsjournal.com. He's speaking to us from historic Kingston, New York. Gerald, it's great to have you back on This Week in Money.
Well, thanks for having me.
Well, for people who are new to the show, perhaps you can explain what the Trends Journal is and what it does.
Well, it's history before it happens. That's what you'll read, and when you subscribe, we also do a daily show each weekday night, Trends in the News broadcast, the real news, what's going on. And the Trends Journal is a quarterly, and we put out a Trends monthly. That'll be out in a couple of days. And we put out a trend alert each week. So we really keep people on top of the trends and way ahead of the news. And we look at over 300 different trend categories, so we can speak about any issues from robotics to artificial intelligence, virtual reality, to clean food, to the economy, to global events going on, socioeconomic, geopolitical. And we call it the globalnomic process because it is global, but it makes connections between different fields. So rather than just looking at an economic viewpoint of an issue, it's much more complicated than that. And that's what we do. We look at it and analyze it through many different sectors and prisms. So it's not just a one-dimensional forecast.
What would people find in your summer 2016 Trends Journal?
Oh, anything from what happened with the Brexit vote and what it really means, and other trends looking at the economy, geopolitics, economics, robotics, elderly trends. One of the big ones is artful aging, and that's going to be something, by the way, that it's for the next 15, 20 years. It's going to be one of the hottest trends, and it's not only it's the entire globe, just about, is aging, and we're going to have an aging population with neither the infrastructure nor the systems in place to take care of them. So those people that get on the ground floor of this and see where it's going, for example, where's your longevity center that you could go to? Try finding one that really has it and knows what they're doing. You won't find it. It's as early as a trend as the health food trend was back in the late 1970s, when you only found health food stores in the back alleys or rundown inner cities. You know, they weren't everywhere. There was no Whole Foods. And that's what we're looking at in these trends, and that's when we identify them and put them into categories, whether they're, trends are born, they grow, mature, reach old age, and die. So we look at them through many different aspects and where they are, where they're going, and how to avoid the dangers and seize the opportunities.
The Trends Journal, I know, picks out stuff before it happens. As you say in your slogan, you told us that the Ukraine crisis with Russia would happen. It did. Is there any other geopolitical thing like that you see in the near future?
Well, that one's going to be heating up again soon. Yeah, the Middle East is on fire, and it's ready to explode. And the United States, for example, under the Nobel Peace Prize winner Obama, they should call that thing a piece of crap prize. He sold, the Americans under him have sold the Saudis $20 billion, that's with a B, $20 billion worth of weapons, and that they're using now against the people in Yemen, the poorest nation in the Middle East that's done nothing to anybody. And a couple of days ago, Doctors Without Border hospital bombed, a couple of dozen people killed. The day before that, a school killing about 20 children. The day before that, the day before that, the day before that, one after another. And then you look what's going on. The United States has launched about 50 airstrikes into Libya. Remember, that was the most prosperous nation in Africa. Gaddafi wasn't doing anything to anybody. They used this line about a humanitarian mission. How about to get their oil and gold, just like it was a humanitarian mission in Iraq? You remember that Saddam Hussein had weapons of mass destruction and ties to Al-Qaeda. Or was it Al-Nusra or Al Capone? They'll make up any story. What was Iraq sitting on the second largest oil reserves in the world? You think they invaded them because of their broccoli crop? So they're destabilizing the entire Middle East. Syria, Afghanistan still in a mess. So we're looking for more war. And unfortunately, when all else fails, that's what they do. They take you to war. And these wars are spilling over. And again, the hypocrisy of the Western media blaming the Ukraine crisis on Russia. It was the United States and the West that overthrew the democratically elected government of Yanukovych, whether you liked him or not. But America, of course, in its murderous coalition of the killing, they have the right to overthrow anybody that they don't like. And they'll put a dictator in that they do. So it's going to be heating up again very shortly in Ukraine, because the Ukraine economy is, no one even talks about it anymore. It's so bad. And now Ukraine, of course, they've just killed a couple of Russian soldiers and agents in Crimea. And that's the other big lie. You read the Western media, and they keep saying it over and over again, that Russia invaded Crimea. Russia didn't invade Crimea. Crimea has been part of Russia longer than America has been a country. And the only reason it went back to Ukraine was it was given back by Khrushchev, who's Ukrainian, when he was running the Soviet Union. But the Russians have had their fleet there, as I said, well over 200 years. So the lies that are going on to make the Westerners hate the Russians as America. I think it was Putin. I'm very positive. Matter of fact, I'm so positive I could probably get a job on any of the major networks because you could lie about anything and say it. I believe it was Putin that overthrew Libya. Wasn't it? Of course it was. No, it was Putin that overthrew Syria, that wants to get rid of the government there. Nope, it wasn't Putin. I think it was the West, wasn't it? No, it was Putin that said Saddam Hussein has to go. So again, you look at the hypocrisy. It's the West that's destabilized the entire region. And they're blaming it on the Russians, and now they're moving in, of course, to the South China Sea. One defeat isn't big enough for the Western coalition. They haven't won a war since World War II, and now they're going to take on the Russian and the Chinese. So if they do, the next war you'll see will be the war that when they asked Albert Einstein, how will the Third World War be fought, with what weapons? He said, I don't know. He said, but they'll use the Fourth World War. They'll be fighting them with sticks and stones. So that's where we're at, and that's where we're going.
Do the stock markets look like they're climbing a wall of worry leading up to the November elections in the U.S.?
I don't believe so. I think that's a cop-out for a lot of people to use, that they're worried about the November elections. It's not going to make any difference at all. It's the central bankers are running the game, not Washington. And whether it's the central banksters in the UK, where they just lowered interest rates to 322-year lows, and stimulus measures buying corporate and government bonds, or whether they're doing the same thing, of course, in Europe. So they're buying $60 billion worth of 60 billion euros, worth of government and corporate bonds, negative interest rate policy. Now the same thing in the States. It won't make a difference. They're using this excuse also, by the way. A number of retailers, particularly in the fast food business, where their profits are going down and their growth isn't as strong as it was, whether it's Starbucks or Wendy's or Tim Hortons, one after another, they're blaming the elections, and it has nothing to do with that. It has to do with people not having money to spend because the jobs stink. And you look at the numbers, what are you looking at? 1% GDP growth in the first 2 quarters in the United States. Take a trip over to Europe. What is GDP the first 2 quarters? 0.4%. Over in Japan, 0.2%. So people have no money. There's no GDP growth. And the wealth is only going into the equity markets.
With all this quantitative easing, it seems to me, a lot of wealth has been transferred from governments to people, but those people are in the upper 1%, aren't they?
Well, again, look at the numbers. The numbers don't lie. In the United States since 2009, 95% of the wealth generated went to the 1%. It's a fact. Take a look globally. According to Oxfam, 62 people now have more money than half the world's population combined. So and you look at how big the bigs have gotten, the multinationals, the mergers and acquisition activity, the stock buybacks. That's the only thing that's juicing the markets. Take a look at what just happened in Japan. Despite how many rounds of Abenomics, this thing going on since late 2012, negative interest rates, trillions of yens pumped into the market. We just saw their exports drop 14%. And people say, well, the reason the exports dropped is because the yen is so strong. Okay, so if the yen is strong, that means the Japanese people should be importing a lot more because, after all, their currency is so strong. Well, imports tumbled nearly 25% in July. So it's an entirely deflated economy. There's no growth, there's no income growth, no wage growth, and despite central banksters doing deals that have never been done in the history of the world.
What other trends are you seeing in the financial markets?
Well, the big ones are those, and they're just going to do everything they can to keep pumping these markets up, look for more quantitative easing. They're not going to, again, they're not lowering interest rates in the States, and go back to last December when they raised them for the first time since December. The first time in over 9 years. They raised them, 25 basis points. And all they kept saying was that expect 4 more rate increases in 2016. Here we are going into September of 2016, third quarter, not one interest rate rise. And if they do raise it, they'll raise it after the election, so probably in December. And then look what happened when they raised them last December. The global stock markets went on cardiac arrest. In January, there was $6 trillion wiped out of the markets. The new year opened up in the United States, the worst in its history of the Dow for the first 2 weeks. So, again, they can't raise interest rates because all this cheap money is the only thing that's driving, whether it's the developed or undeveloped nations. Look at the emerging markets. Look how they're booming now, because they're not afraid of the Fed raising interest rates, and they have to pay back all those loans that they borrowed in dollars. So now with the dollar staying weak, now they could start paying back some of those loans, because when their currencies get devalued and the dollar gets stronger, they have to pay it back with more of their devaluing currencies. So now that hot money again is flying back into the emerging markets because there's no other place to get any profits from gambling. It's called TINA. There is no alternative. And that's why you're seeing equity markets going up in both emerging and in a lot of developed nations. There is no alternative other than gambling, because you can't put your money into anything safe and get a return on it anymore.
We'll have more with Gerald Celente next on This Week in Money.
GEM International is a new diamond explorer in the richest diamond-producing country in Africa, located next to the 4th largest producing diamond mine in the world. International Spotlight is on an 1109-carat diamond recently discovered in Africa by a fellow Canadian junior with a proven operator and finance team. GEM International trades on the TSX Venture Exchange, symbol GI. Visit us at gemdiamondmining.com.
This Week in Money is archived online at talkdigitalnetwork.com.
Welcome back to This Week in Money. I'm Jim Goddard. We're speaking to Trends Journal publisher Gerald Celente. Gerald, are real estate markets around the world changing trend?
Well, yes, because again, that's the bubble that's been built with all this cheap money. And they've built a real estate bubble along with an equity bubble. And when this bubble bursts, we are forecasting it will be the worst one in modern history, worse than the one of the crash of 1929. All these markets have been artificially inflated with zero, negative, and near zero, and historically low interest rates. So when rates start rising, these markets are starting to go down. Take a look right here in New York. You're looking at the markets going down already. And at the very top there, sales are down like 20%. And you're seeing that happening a lot. So the fish rots from the head down. Very important to see what's going on at the top of the markets. Yeah, there are the big sales that keep happening because there are the multi-billionaires and the trillionaires. But other than that, you're looking at the whole top of the market starting to come down. So there's going to be a point when it just can't sustain itself anymore.
When real estate bubbles burst, do the economies trend towards recession or depression?
This is going to be a depression because we're already in a recession. When you look at the GDP numbers, when you look at the high unemployment numbers, these numbers aren't real, by the way, in the United States that you're seeing. They were manipulated under the Clinton administration. So, for example, once you can't find a job, you're no longer counted as unemployed. When you look at John Williams' shadow stats, the real numbers, we're looking 23% unemployment. So what we're saying is that when this went, the only thing that's stopping the markets from going into cardiac arrest is the markets. And the markets are shielding how bad the global economy really is. Because as long as the markets stay strong, that's used as the indicator for the general economies. So once the markets start collapsing, then they'll take a closer look at how bad the general economies are. Again, we've had no productivity growth. How about this one? Let's look at corporate earnings. How many quarters are they down in the United States? It just keeps going on and on. So there's no real corporate earnings. They're in decline. You look at the real numbers. You again look at the GDP numbers out of Japan. Look at the import-export numbers out of China. They're both strongly negative, and that's the barometer: what China exports, what China imports. Because if China's not importing, and they take in some 40 to 45% of a lot of the raw materials, copper, iron ore, nickel. So if they're not importing, that means you look at all these emerging markets that rely heavily on exports to China. How could they be making money? And if China's not exporting, that means other countries aren't buying. And again, people keep making the argument with the value of a currency determining the amount of exports. No, global demand is down. So you could have a declining currency. That doesn't mean you're going to sell more product when demand is down. So again, China's exports are down even though the yuan is down, and Japan's exports are down even though the yen is strong. So the currency of a nation does not determine the strength of imports and exports as it used to when total demand is down.
Is there any way to improve that situation without allowing the markets to take a natural drop?
Yes, they have to take the natural drop. This isn't capitalism anymore. They should stop teaching it as that in universities. It's bankism. The banks are running the show. There's no true price discovery. We just discussed it. People are borrowing money for nothing and gambling. So there's no price discovery. And then markets have to, in capitalism, you rise and fall on your own merits. We're too big to fail. That's anathema to capitalism. So no, we have to go through the downturn. True price discovery has to be found again. And it's nowhere near it is, neither in the markets nor in the real estate markets, whether it's equity or real estate. So we have to go down and find out where real true value's at. And then once you do that, then you start rebuilding your economies, and the way you do it, as we see it, is with a self-sustaining economy. I mean, you take the United States, 320 million people. We should be trading among ourselves, among states and cities and localities, making your own shirts, shoes, and computers. Start putting back into place regulations that were in place so nations were self-sustaining economies rather than opening it up so the multinationals could rip it off. And that's all that's happened. So there are ways out. You put back in place the Robinson-Patman Act, Sherman Antitrust Act, Clayton Antitrust Act, and pre-NAFTA. And then you rebuild your economy, whether it's the United States, the UK, Italy, France, Canada, countries rich in natural and human resources. The only thing that's benefiting with this globalization of the multinationals. The numbers don't lie. The multinationals will, and the politicians will, but the numbers speak for themselves.
Are you following trends in the worldwide banking system?
Oh, of course. And you look what's going on. Again, follow the money. Look at Deutsche Bank. Look at Societe Generale. Look at Royal Bank of Scotland. Look what their stock values are. Banks cannot make money in negative and zero interest rate policy. They can't do it. They can't. They need higher interest rates to make money, to loan out money. So, and then when you have negative rates, it's costing them to put money in central banks. So yeah, and then you look at the whole deflation in the energy sector, and how many banks are really exposed to that, and all their other bad loans. So this whole banking system is under a lot of stress, and it's showing it in the valuations of the banks.
Will clean water become a hot commodity in the future? I mean, take a look at Canada. We have the biggest amount of fresh water in the world.
It's going to be huge. Clean water and clean food. Just to put the numbers into perspective, at the turn around 1900, there were about 1.5 billion people on the planet. Now we have about 7.3 billion. And you look at the amount of poisoned water throughout the planet. Here in the States, that foam that they use to put out fires in airplanes, and that I forgot the name, some long name. Anyway, they use it at all of these military bases for practices, and plus they use it in real life. Well, that stuff is now seeping into the water systems right over here, right where I am, just south of us in Newburgh, New York. There's Stewart Air Force Base, and they've been doing it for years. Now they've poisoned the entire water supply of the city, and people have been drinking this cancerous poison for decades, but it's around the country. And there's one poisonous chemical after another in the water supplies. You know, what a joke it is. I mean, here we go, Flint, Michigan, they got all, you know, look at that one. And in all these other places where they're testing, where they have iron in the water, using lead pipes. Excuse me, not lead in the water. Excuse me, not iron. Lead. You know, I remember as a little kid reading, what happened to the Romans? They had lead in their water, and you're using lead pipes? I mean, that's the stupidity of it. Again, it's politicians and bureaucrats that are running and ruining countries and lives. So, yeah, clean water is going to be huge. And there's also going to be battles over it, too. People that have it in their communities, are they going to want multinationals to come in, like Nestle and Coca-Cola and Pepsi-Cola and other companies coming in and stealing it from them and selling it at a high premium?
What about the president of Nestle saying he does not consider clean water to be a human right?
Well, how about psychopaths saying that Saddam Hussein has weapons of mass destruction and ties to Al-Qaeda? I mean, it's just another crazy guy out there. Why should anybody, you know, why should anybody believe a moron like him?
We'll have more with Gerald Celente next on This Week in Money.
I'm Larry Ray, President and CEO of American Manganese, Inc., listed on the TSX Venture, ticker symbol AMY, A-M-Y, with proprietary patents in the U.S., China, and South Africa. Our focus is on recycling lithium-ion batteries for electric vehicles. China recently legislated the responsibility for recycling onto their electric vehicle manufacturers and importers. For more information, please visit AmericanManganeseInc.com or phone me, Larry Ray, at 778-574-4444.
This Week in Money is archived online at talkdigitalnetwork.com.
Welcome back to This Week in Money. I'm Jim Goddard. We're speaking with Trends Journal publisher Gerald Celente. He's speaking to us from historic Kingston, New York. By the way, can you tell us a little bit about Kingston, New York? We're familiar with Kingston, Ontario, where they have a big prison. I bet you Kingston, New York's nicer than that.
Kingston, New York, this was the first capital of New York State, and then the British burnt it down. So we have more pre-Revolutionary War stone buildings here than anywhere else in the country. And we own, this is the most historic Four Corners in America. It's the only place where there's a pre-Revolutionary War stone building on each corner. And we own 3 of them. One is the 1774 Academy. And people such as John Vanderlyn, the famous Hudson River painter, whose works are in the Capitol Rotunda. He went to school there. And we own the 1750s Franz Roggen House and the 1763 Dr. Jensen House. The other building's a museum. And it's also, this is being the first capital of New York State. The Constitution that was written for New York State, a large portion of that Constitution became America's Constitution. And in the courthouse that I'm looking at right now, at that location, that's where it was written. And also, we had 3 Supreme Court justices in the United States that were judges here, including John Jay. And we also have the Senate House here, and that's the oldest building in America open to the public. So it's a very historic area. This is where the seeds of democracy were sown. You know, there were a lot of dark, issues, of course, with this country as well. The genocide they committed, and the slavery and other things, but there was a lot of greatness too. And the Constitution, the Bill of Rights were 2 of those things. So there were a lot of great things that happened here when the seeds of democracy were truly sown here. And from the historic Four Corners here, last September I launched Occupy Peace. And we closed down the streets. I had Ralph Nader here, Cindy Sheehan, Dr. Robert Thurman, Uma Thurman's father, who's a renowned practicing Buddhist, and Gary Null and others as speakers here. And that the Occupy Peace is the website is occupypeace.us. And it's the only peace plan that I know of with an action plan. and that's to close all the bases overseas, bring home all the troops, no foreign entanglements, to honor the founding fathers, beginning with George Washington, who, and of course Franklin, Jefferson, Madison, Adams, Hamilton, no foreign entanglements, and to rebuild this rotted infrastructure here, and to force Congress to vote to go to war, which we have not done since World War II, and like Britain, having the Brexit vote, a referendum, have referendums on each state ballot, where we the people will tell Congress how to vote, because we're the ones that pay for the war with our money and our lives. So that was Occupy Peace, and that's some of Kingston.
What is direct democracy? Could it work? Is it resistant to voter fraud? What could it mean for the economy?
Well, again, go back to Brexit. It was a referendum, direct democracy. What's one of the richest nations in the world? Switzerland. What do they have? Direct democracy. You can't name the politicians. Nobody knows their names. Politicians. We have to give them a better name than that. I mean, more like sleazeballs or lowlifes or suck-ups or sellouts. So what they do is they have an issue. They get enough people to sign a petition. They get the petition, then they have a referendum. And the people vote whether or not they want to do what the referendum says. And again, if it's good enough for Switzerland, they haven't been in a war since about the 1850s, one of the richest countries in the world. You don't hear a lot about violence over there. How about letting the people vote? And then you say, well, Switzerland's a small country. It doesn't make a difference if you're voting in a community, you're voting in a country. And we could do it all online. Oh, but they'll be hacked. Oh, yeah, like the systems aren't hacked now. Matter of fact, online voting could be the most transparent voting that we've ever had, because it should be open to everyone to look at. So you're looking at algorithms and all the other data needed to see if the votes are being legitimately cast. So we should be voting on major issues, and again, Brexit proved it. All of the great power that they pushed on the British people to vote against Brexit, despite it, the people spoke, agree or disagree with them. Why are we less important than politicians? Let the people vote. Give them direct democracy, because the two-party system, or how many parties you have, the only people that are having a party are the people in the party. Everybody else is getting ripped off. So to us, direct democracy, people power, is the wave of the future.
In Canada right now, they're talking about electoral reform, but there's no talk by the government of holding a referendum. Again, they're saying to us, it's too important to put in the hands of the people.
Well, that's exactly it. So who are they? What sociopath or psychopath? Who are the they? How dare they speak down to the people? And where's the outrage? And I have to tell you, that's the one thing missing, particularly here in the States, courage. A lack of courage, no passion. Bad attitude, no passion, no courage. And again, what I've called this election now between Clinton and Trump, we're getting clumped. Look at this, 220 million people, and that's our choice. Who are they to tell us what to do?
If you had a choice of going to lunch with somebody, who would it be, Hillary or Donald?
I wouldn't go to either of them. I wouldn't waste my time with them. I wouldn't associate with them. I find them both repulsive. And what am I? If I go to lunch with Trump, according to the stuff that he eats, what is he? KFC and McDonald's, and they both drink Diet Cokes. I don't think we'd have a good lunch together. The other thing too is that we're doing a story. The Trends Monthly is coming out in a couple of days, and we're doing a story about Trump is the same military school brat he was. The only kids that went to military school, him and I are the same age, is when you were so out of control, that was the threat that your parents gave you. You little SOB, I had enough, you're going to military school. I was threatened more than once. Trump was so out of line, they actually sent him. So now imagine being a teenager. Here I am taking my girlfriend, taking her to drive-ins, tooling around in my MG midget, working as a soda jerk in a candy store, all the kids coming over after school, having a grand time. Rather than being in military school in some little town in upstate New York, in Cornwall, New York, in the middle of nowhere, dressing up in a costume every day, following phony military orders, eating mess hall food as I'm eating my mother's food, may she rest in peace, finest Italian food anywhere, and give that up because I'm so out of my mind and so arrogant that I can't obey my parents. Trump is still that kid. He can't obey his handlers. I used to run political campaigns. I worked for the mayor of Yonkers when ran the campaign. I was the number 2 guy at a graduate school. I mean, that's a big city. You know, at the time it was almost about 300,000 people. Yeah, I used to run campaigns in Westchester County and was the assistant to the secretary of the New York State Senate. Running a campaign is not rocket science. The reason I hit the top so fast is I was around a bunch of jerks. And I was trained by my parents, may they rest in peace, and my aunts and uncles, street-savvy people, smart people. So Trump can't follow orders. Just like he couldn't obey his parents, he's still that military school brat. He can't obey orders. You have your script, you stick to it. And then when you change the script, you change it. But you're always on script. You need no other proof than Barack Obama, a community organizer from the south side of Chicago who organized nothing. As a junior senator, nobody knew him. He never did anything. It's the presidential reality show. Oprah took him under his wing, showed him how to be an actor. He read a teleprompter, and he never strayed from it. And he still doesn't. Trump doesn't have that. His ego's too big. And so there's no teleprompter in the world that could control him. And he keeps going off message. So we had him as the winner of this race because it comes down to the economy. And he's destroying himself because he can't control himself. We'll see with the new people that he brought in if that'll be of any help.
You're listening to This Week in Money. Our guest is Gerald Celente, the publisher of the Trends Journal. I know that Trump made fun of Senator McCain because he was captured during the Vietnam War, but Trump avoided military service, claiming he had bone spurs in his heel, but today he can't recall what heel it was.
Well, again, I'm that age, and you try to do anything you can to get out of the draft. And I have to agree with him, by the way, about McCain. And the thing is, Trump's a hypocrite. Like now he says, I wish I served. Were you kidding me? I did anything I could to get out of the draft. I went to my father, may he so rest in peace. I said, Pop, what should I do? He said, I taught you enough. You figure it out. And I did. And I wasn't smart enough to be against the war. Another lying war. There was no Gulf of Tonkin incident that they lied us into, just like there was no weapons of mass destruction. But going back to Trump, he's a fraud. He talks tough, but he never fights. So in avoiding the war, it was, how could I get out of this thing? And now he says, of course, he wishes he didn't. So again, it's just double talk. And, but then again, they're always willing to send other people's sons to go fight. Do you think he'd send his boys or his daughters? No. Again, they're both, look at the murder, go on YouTube and look at Hillary Clinton when they asked her, anybody could do it. I think she was on CBS, Hillary Clinton, Gaddafi, and they asked her how she felt when they found out Muammar Gaddafi was killed, when he was murdered. She said, we came, we saw, he died, and she starts laughing. So you got to be sick to get into that kind of job. It's what Eisenhower said. Anybody that seeks the office is either crazy or out of their mind. Words to that effect. And that's what you have.
Well, I respect military leaders like an Eisenhower or Senator McCain because they've seen the horrors of war, and I think they're probably much less likely to get involved in something like that. Or are they?
Well, no, that's where the train of thought actually I lost when you were talking about McCain. I wanted to get back to that, why I agreed with Trump about that. He's not a hero. His plane was shot down bombing innocent people. Over 3 million dead. That doesn't make you a hero. The term, they throw this word hero out to everybody that serves in the military. Heroes commit acts of heroism. McCain would have been blown out of the service a long time ago if his old man wasn't an admiral. He kept wiping out his airplanes. He graduated last in his class. He was given a free pass. No, he's not a hero. And again, the only reason I got out, I didn't go to the war, as I said, it wasn't that I was smart enough to be against it. I just couldn't imagine myself being in a foreign country getting shot at, but no, I don't consider I'm tired of hearing about making everybody that signs up for the military a hero. You're not a hero. You volunteered to do that job. That's your trip. Like my trip is doing what I want to do. I don't tell anybody to call me a hero because you put a uniform on and you go into other countries that didn't invite you there and you're occupying them and killing people over there, in my definition of the world, does not make them a hero. So I don't want anybody shoving that down my throat anymore. I've had it. And that's why I launched OccupyPeace.us. These are not heroes in my book. And I don't want them forcing me to read their book. Just like I don't force anybody to read the Trends Journal, my book. And what's different about my book than their book is think for yourself. I don't demean people that don't believe what I write or what I believe. But boy, if you come out against the military, there's something wrong with you.
Is this trend towards war going to continue on the geopolitical front?
Exactly, it is. We've been taken over by the Democrats and the Republicans. Look at the wars the Democrats launch, beginning with that low-life SOB who should rot in hell, Woodrow Wilson, bringing us into World War I when the war was almost over. Franklin Roosevelt, both of them promising not to get us into war if they were reelected. Lyndon Johnson, Vietnam. Barack Obama, Libya, Syria. Then the Republicans, George Bush and Bush, both of them. First Gulf War, second in Afghanistan. They're murderous, crazy people, and nobody wants to call them what they are, except they salute, bow, and call them presidents, prime ministers, and chancellors. How about psychopaths and sociopaths? I've had enough. Show me their victories. Show me their victories, and then we can talk. They always have new strategies for disaster. Yeah, we lost the Korean War. We lost the Vietnam War. We lost the Afghan War. We lost the Iraq War. We lost the Libyan War, and we're losing the Syrian War. I got an idea. Let's bomb them some more. I wonder why they create radicals. I can't figure it out. Can't be because they go into foreign nations, kill millions of people, innocent people, destroy their entire country, leave young people with no future and everybody they love dead, and they're occupying these nations, and they call the people in those nations that want to get the occupiers out militants and terrorists. Orwell couldn't make this stuff up. Actually, he did, and he was right.
Gerald, what's an entrepreneur?
It's an entrepreneur for people that are in business that want to expand their business in different fields, but they want to do it on trend. An entrepreneur are people that want to start businesses but haven't, but don't know the direction to go into. So we show them how to get on trend and the businesses that will grow. It's for professionals who want to expand their career, maybe go into a different one, or people that don't have a career yet that want to decide which one to go into. So that's what we do as an entrepreneur. Rather than moving forward and thinking that you know where you're going, how about getting some more information that may assist you in making plans that are going to put you into the future in a way that's going to be productive, both financially and to fulfill you, of course, spiritually and emotionally. And that's what becoming an entrepreneur is.
Would that include things like artificial intelligence, virtual reality, robots?
Oh, those are things that are going to keep growing. There's no question. People ask me, is this going to be like the next .com bust? No way. This is just the beginning. It's a whole new world. The industrial age is dead and dying. It's a whole new world in front of us. The robotization from industrialization, artificial intelligence, virtual reality, new education systems, on and on. There's no end to it.
And finally, Gerald, before we go, your thoughts on gold, silver, and the U.S. dollar.
Well, again, they can't raise interest rates, because they raise interest rates, you see what happens. The equity markets go into cardiac arrest. So they can't keep raising interest rates. They're not going to raise them again probably until after the election. So as long as they keep pumping out cheap money, digital dollars based on nothing and backed by nothing, I remain bullish on gold. Our forecast is, and I do not give financial advice, our forecast is when gold breaks over 1,400 smartly, well above 1,450, 1,480, we believe it's going to spike to a 2,000.
Gerald, you said you don't give financial advice, but you are giving people a real heads up with the Trends Journal, aren't you?
Well, again, the motto is think for yourself. Here are the facts as we see them, as they've been reported, and what the data is. These are our conclusions, and we believe this is going to be a positive trend that you could profit from, or this will be a negative trend that you might want to consider not going into that direction. So yes, we're political atheists, and we're globalnomic. We look at the world as, and again, in many different spheres and many different dimensions, and provide people with the opportunities to seize upon them and avoid the dangers.
Gerald, how do you get the real facts to make these decisions with when we find out that CNN commentators say on air, we have to elect Hillary, it's our duty?
You read enough information, or I'll give you an example. You have to go with hard data. And is the data manipulated? I don't know. But again, if we talk about the hard data, and for example, I said earlier that Japan's exports dropped 14% on year and imports fell almost 25%. That's data. If they say that Russia invaded Crimea, that's propaganda. So when you know enough, but you have to know the data and you have to know the facts. So when you know the data that no, Russia's been in Crimea now, and Crimea has been a part of Russia longer than America's been a country, so that's how you break through the propaganda. So it's continual studying. You never stop learning, and that's what we do. We never stop learning.
Is that a mistake a lot of people make later in life? I'm too old to learn?
Well, one of our top trends is artful aging, and I guess that's why for centuries they used to honor the elders, because they'd been around a long time and kept learning. So I guess as long as you keep learning, you'll stay on trend, and you'll be ahead of the curve. And that's why the elders, it meant something in the past. Again, today it's we have a youth culture. But again, anybody that's been around a long time. I'm not the guy I was when I was a kid. I'm not the same trend forecaster I was when I started this in 1980. I've grown far beyond that, and I keep growing as I keep learning.
Gerald, how can people get the Trends Journal?
Trendsresearch.com, trendsresearch.com.
Gerald, thank you so much for being on This Week in Money.
Thank you, Jim.
My guest has been Gerald Celente, publisher of TrendsJournal.com. And that wraps up our show for this week. We'd like to thank our guests, Ross Clark and Gerald Celente. And thank you for listening. If you have any questions for the show, you can email us at info@howstreet.com. I'm Jim Goddard. We're back next week with more This Week in Money.
Comments made on This Week in Money are an expression of opinion only and should not be construed in any manner whatsoever as recommendations to buy or sell any financial instrument at any time. Archived online at TalkDigitalNetwork.com. This Week in Money is a production of Howe Street Media Incorporated. Executive producer is Tom Allen.